Okay, everybody, thank you for joining us this afternoon for our presentation. The presentation is on post-incident reviews, and this presentation is primarily directed toward healthcare facilities, senior care facilities, and things of that nature. Now, if you are not one of those organizations, you can certainly utilize this for incidents at your business, whether it be manufacturing, educational, construction, or anything else. But today we're primarily looking at the healthcare industry and senior care facilities. So what we're going to do today is we're going to cover a number of areas, and primarily we're going to cover the 5 W's of the post-incident review. So what, why, when, where, and who. So when we look at those, we're going to try to explain to you each of those and how it relates to the post-incident review. And then we're going to talk about conducting a successful post-incident review, so that when you're done with that, you're going to figure out what your desired outcomes are, and it's going to be successful and something you can use to improve your process, your organization, and your work environment for your staff as well as your residents. Then also we're going to share with you a sample form that West Bend Mutual Insurance has put together that you can utilize, and you can take that and adjust it and make changes to it to fit your organization. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to just cover a scenario here. Now this scenario is something that I'm going to briefly cover now. Then we're going to go through the presentation. Then we're going to visit the scenario again at the end and kind of walk through what we would do as part of that PIR. And so I'll just read this to you if you just follow along with me here. Julie works in a group home serving developmentally delayed adults. Lunch is delayed today as Julie is having difficulty with the stove. Julie had the same issue last week. However, she forgot to report it to maintenance. As the clients are sitting at the kitchen table, Julie starts to notice them growing restless as they are getting hungry for lunch. Julie tries to reassure them that lunch is almost ready. Julie notices 2 of the clients standing up and yelling at each other. One client accidentally knocked a stack of plates off the table onto the floor. The arguing, the commotion of the plates hitting the floor, and the fact that the clients were growing agitated as they waited for lunch was creating a highly stressful environment. Julie approached the individuals that were arguing and tried to calm them down when one of them acted out and struck Julie. Additional staff members in the area, hearing the commotion, came into the dining hall to assist. Eventually, everyone calmed down and they were able to serve lunch. Julie was not seriously injured. However, she was very shaken up and traumatized by the incident. So when you look at that, it might sound familiar. It might be something that has happened at your organization or something similar to that. So then we look at that and we try to determine how the post-incident review is going to be utilized when we look at an incident similar to that. So we start out with our 5 W's, and the first thing is what? What is a PIR? So the post-incident review process is an evaluation of an incident, management and staff response to the incident, impact on the staff and resident, lessons learned from the incident, and actions to be considered to prevent future incidents. Now, when we first started looking into this, a lot of people use different acronyms and different things when they talked about these type of review processes. Some people call them post-incident debriefing. Some people had different acronyms for them. We chose to use the word review as a post-incident review. The reason being that a post-incident debriefing, the word debriefing typically is utilized in a military or a law enforcement or emergency services perspective when they look at doing a debriefing of an incident. And it talks about a lot of things from logistics and tactical and things of that nature that really are not what we are trying to get out of this process. So we decided to use the word review. And when we pulled up the word review in the dictionary that we used, I can't tell you which one that is, but the word review definition was a formal assessment or examination of something with the possibility or intention of instituting change if necessary. So again, that is the goal, right? Is to review this and then determine whether or not there's change. And with that being said, brings us to the next slide, which is our why. Why are we doing a post-incident review? The first bullet, as you can see, says allows you to determine the root cause or causes of the incident. Now, this is kind of a critical thing when you think about the cause of an incident. So the root cause, as opposed to just the cause, is something that we look at when we talk about loss prevention, loss control, and we say somebody was walking down the hallway and they slipped on some water and fell and got injured. Well, what was the cause of that? If you say the cause was water on the floor, that's possible that that's the cause, but we want to look deeper into that and look for the root cause. So the root cause would be, where did the water come from? Do we have a leak in the roof? Do we have a water fountain on the wall that's maybe leaking onto the floor? Or did somebody walking down the hallway spill some of their drink onto the floor? So when we go to the root cause, that helps us then to try to mitigate that issue. If it's a leaky roof, then we need to obviously get that fixed so that we don't have water leaking onto the floor and creating that hazard. So that's what we want to do here, is it allows us to determine that root cause. The second bullet here allows you to determine if policies and procedures are working or need to be addressed. So everyone has policies in their organization. They also have SOGs, standard operating guidelines, or SOPs, standard operating procedures. So when you look at your policies or guidelines and procedures, they're going to tell you how certain things should be done and how they need to be done. This will allow us to look at the incident, consider our policies and procedures, and determine whether or not we need to make any effective changes to minimize the exposure or potential of this happening again. Next one we have demonstrates to the staff and clients that you care. Something went wrong and we're here to help, support, and develop solutions. So when you talk to your staff and your residents, number one thing that you want to do obviously is provide proper care for your residents. And you also want to make sure that you're providing a safe environment for your working staff, that they can come to work and feel safe and be safe and not have to worry about getting injured or having hazards. So when you take an incident and you do a post-incident review, that is expressing to them your interest and desire to make sure that they know you care and that they know that you're going to try to see if there's something you can do to minimize this potential again. Next one is help you progress as an organization. So obviously as an organization, regardless of the type, you want to continually improve, you want to progress, you want to be more profitable, you want to be more efficient, you want to be more effective. And to do that, you need to take a look at anything that's happened, different incidents, and determine how you can minimize that potential in the future, which then helps you to improve and progress. That might be through training. It might be, and training can be, continual training down the road, or specifically onboarding, when you're onboarding new employees, making sure that you provide them with the proper training and guidance to make sure that they know what to do. And then also enhance communication. So that's a key, is communication, obviously, is that making sure that you're communicating to the staff and to your management and even to the, the clients or the residents of what's going on, so that when you're doing things, you can make sure that everybody's on the same page, everybody understands the policies and procedures, and we communicate everything successfully. Next one we have here is enhances your ability to properly care for your residents or clients. And again, like we said, your business is to care for people, your residents, your clients. That is what your business is. So you need to care for them properly. And you want to make sure that what you do doesn't trigger an adverse behavior event. You want to make sure that what you do is done in a manner that is the most received by the resident, is not perceived as being combative or confrontational, that they're not in fear or anything like that, because sometimes that's what causes them to strike out. That's the trigger. So we want to make sure that we provide proper care for them and care that they are comfortable with. And then minimize possible work comp and general liability claims. Now, from our perspective, being the insurance company, obviously our business is to, provide coverage, but then to minimize the exposure. So we want to make sure that we do everything we can to minimize these types of situations, these incidents, which then in the long run makes it more profitable for your business and ours. So we want to minimize any potential claims of that type. So then when do we do a post-incident review? Well, we want to do that following every incident, even, you notice here, positive, negative, or something out of the norm. So a post-incident review is not just something that's negative. It's not just something that's done after a negative event. So you could have a positive outcome, okay? Maybe someone does something, or they strike out, no one's injured, doesn't become a big deal, but yet, we want to cover that and do a post-incident review to say, okay, what happened? What did we do right that caused it to have a positive outcome? And let's make sure that we can note that stuff so that we can utilize that in our training to hopefully have positive outcomes in the future of similar events. Negative outcome, obviously, anytime that there's a negative outcome, we certainly want to do a post-incident review to determine what happened and how we can improve that and minimize the potential of it happening again. And then something out of the norm, I guess anything that is just not normal. Something happened, well, that's weird. That doesn't happen before. Or, what the heck was that? Something out of the norm, that's when you want to sit down and say, hey, maybe we need to do a post-incident review, discuss it, determine what happened, and see what we can do to, prevent that from happening again. And then following a near miss incident. So near miss, good catch, whatever you use as far as the phrase there, this is one of those things where it didn't happen, but it could have, or it almost did, right? And so we want to look at that and say, what can we do to make sure that that near miss doesn't become an actual incident down the road? Try to deal with it, get it addressed, and come up with some policy and procedures to prevent it from becoming an incident. And then when to do it? Within the shift that the incident occurs, or as soon as possible. So if you have 3 shifts and your day shift is on and something happens during the day, it's preferable that that post-incident review happen that day, happens during that shift. Well, it's still fresh in everybody's mind. Everybody still knows what happened. Anybody who witnessed the event is there and it's fresh in their mind. And so you want to do that as soon as possible. Now, if it's not possible for some reason to do it on that shift at that time, then we definitely want to try to do it within 28 to 48 hours to make sure that everything is still fresh in everybody's mind. Now, if it's a pretty significant incident, obviously that's going to have administration staff in, it's going to have other people involved. And at that point, then you're going to base the time and everything on what would be appropriate based on that specific incident. So then also, as part of an ongoing process to proactively check in with your staff, you want to go back and look and say, okay, is there anything that we should review? Anything that could have, should have happened? Anything that, someone, maybe a near miss that people didn't think about or didn't think to bring forward? So check in with your staff and proactively talk to them and bring up stuff like this to see if there's something that should be done. If maybe a post-incident review should be take place based on an incident that they're aware of. And then the bottom one here, the bolded one, the post-incident review meeting is initiated only after the incident has been resolved. So obviously, if it's a big incident, things are kind of chaotic, we got people upset, potential injuries, anything like that, obviously we want that to all be taken care of, care provided, and things done prior to us trying to set up or discuss a post-incident review. So we want to make sure that everything has been resolved, then we can move into this post-incident review process. Okay, where do we do it? Now, this is something here that is going to be flexible, okay? So I'm actually a retired fire chief from the fire service, and our guys, we used to have do our post-incident reviews sometimes just on the way back from a call. So they went out on a medical call and they had an incident that happened, and they're in the engine company on the way back, and you have the officer, the driver, and firefighters in back, and they all have their headsets on talking to each other. This could be just a brief PIR that takes place right then when the officer says, okay, guys, this is what happened. Let's run through it and everything else. It doesn't always have to be a huge formal event, and it doesn't always have to be a large event in a big conference room, anything else. Now, anything that is large, obviously that's going to be the setup, right? But The key is that it's done someplace where there's privacy to share sensitive information. You don't want this done out in the middle of public. You don't want it done in the middle of a bunch of additional staff members who don't need to be involved, potential family members, other residents, things of that nature. So you want it to be private, and you want it to be someplace where any sensitive information that is shared stays in that group. Should be free of outside distractions and interruptions. So you don't want to do it in the middle of a dining room at a four-top table and you have a bunch of other people around there eating and carrying on and disruptions and things like that. So try to get off to a place, preferably in maybe a conference room or something where you have a little time to just talk without any interruptions or distractions. Have the space be large enough that allows the number of people to comfortably be in that room. Now, if this is a large event, and it involves a larger group of people, the whole shift of staff members, maybe, some administration and things of that nature, you might have it in a conference room or larger room. If you have the ability to do so, what you want to do is you want to have chairs set in a circular fashion where everybody is facing the middle and everybody is on an equal level, equal basis in there. You don't want people stacked up in rows with one person standing in front in an authoritarian position or things of that nature. You want everyone to be level and everyone to be on the same playing field and everybody to have the same voice when they're in these meetings, okay? And have it be convenient and easy, okay? You don't want to say, you know what, everybody, we're going to meet over at the, conference room at the hotel down the road and have people have to transfer there and meet there and things of that nature. Try to have some place predetermined in your facility or in your organization where you can hold these events if necessary. And then who takes part in a post-incident review? So obviously the staff members that are directly involved in the incident, they will be in this. Then also staff members that witnessed it. So you have other staff around that heard or saw something going on and they can add information and share information. They would be part of it. And then the management supervisor or lead person who was on duty at the time, they would be part of it. And then if you have this, a lot of facilities may not, but if you have somebody who's a mental health specialist or professional or a post-incident review trained facilitator, they could be part of this as well to basically facilitate the meeting. If they're not, then typically management or supervisor person would facilitate it. Now, facilitating it does not mean that they are in an authoritarian position, right? Because this is going to be basically a meeting where everybody's just sharing information, okay? Now, you can, if you want, as it says in the bottom, you can mandate that people be part of this. You can mandate that they join in the post-incident review. However, I highly suggest that if you do that, that you don't force them to actively participate. If they want to sit there and they're not comfortable participating, but you want them in there, that's a determination you'll have to make as an organization, whether or not you want to mandate participation. But again, we would suggest that if you do that, that you don't force people to speak in that group. It may not be comfortable for them. So conducting a successful post-incident review, the key to this is that this is not a punitive process. This is not something where you're trying to punish somebody for screwing up. This is not something where you're trying to punish somebody for not following policies or procedures. It's basically you're gathering information, okay? So it's non-punitive. You definitely don't want it to be contentious or confrontational in any way. So you should not have, one employee against another, or people pointing fingers or making accusations or anything like that. That's not the purpose of this, okay? And then not a critical review of individuals. You're not pointing out somebody and say, what you did was wrong, it wasn't in policy, and your screw up is what happened here. That's not the intent of this either. If there is some reason or some justification for some disciplinary action or some training or some, things of that nature, that's fine, but that should be handled outside of this process individually between the employee, management, staff, or whatever your organization has set up, but it would not be in that part of this process. Okay, establish comfort level for all staff. Everybody has to know when they come into this review, post-incident review, that there isn't any rank and file in here. There's nobody that's over someone else. Everybody has to be able to be comfortable to share what they saw, what they witnessed, what they know, so that you can gather information without somebody having fear of reprisal or something of that nature. So get everybody to be comfortable. And the best thing on these is to let people know ahead of time. Make sure that you educate people on what a post-incident review is and when it will take place and who will be involved, so that when one does happen, they're not all surprised thinking, what's going on here? What is this all about? And they get defensive or get in fear that they might have screwed up or something. So make sure you do it to where everybody's aware of what it is ahead of time. So when they go into this, they're comfortable and relaxed and understand the purpose of it. And then assurance of full confidentiality. So again, when the people are in there, they want to know that what they share, what they witnessed, what they say is held in confidence, and that they're not going to be called out by somebody outside who says, hey, I heard in that room you said this or that. That's not what this is about either. Okay. And then you have to have full support of your administration. Regardless of what type of organization you have or what size it is or whatever, you have to have your administration from the top down on board with performing a post-incident review, the purpose of it, the reasoning for it, and the desired outcomes. So you need supportive administration to make sure that this is going to be useful and functional. So the desired outcome, what is it we want to get out of a post-incident review? Well, the number one thing here is to gather relevant information regarding the incident. What took place? What did this individual say that may have caused this, or what did this individual do? And by individuals, I mean residents, employees, whatever. And again, this isn't pointing fingers, it's just gathering factual information. And that's what you want to do, is just gather relevant factual information pertaining to the incident, and only to the incident, not something that somebody may have done earlier or whatever else that they think is related to it. If it's not related, it's not relevant. Identify areas of improvement. So again, that's where you're going to look at it and say, what can we do to make things better? Now, again, this is the desired outcome of the post-incident review. Identifying areas of improvement are not things that are discussed in that room. You're not going to sit in there and have people start spitballing ideas on how to, fix this or fix that. That's kind of what we're going to look at after the fact and determine what we could do to improve things. There might be suggestions, there might be some discussion on it, but the whole thing is not to sit there and, determine all the fixes right there at that moment. Building confidence with staff regarding adverse behavior incidents. So what you want to do is you want your staff to know that if these events occur, that there is policy in place, there's procedures in place, there's things that they have to assist them, there's resources and things of that nature. So they're confident that if something happens, they know what to do, they know where to go to get additional resources if necessary. They're confident that when they call on their management, administration, supervisor, whoever happens to be there, that they're all on the same page and everybody understands how to, deal with these situations. And so it builds a lot of confidence in the staff that they're not worried that if something happens, everybody's going a different direction. There's consistency, which talks about the next one here. Develop consistency with staff, right? They know what's going on, and every incident's going to be different. No two are alike, but still the way we handle it and, how we go with the process of dealing with it should be relatively consistent based on our policies and procedures. Then minimize negative outcomes from adverse behavior incidents. Well, one of the biggest things that I can think of that would be a negative outcome from this is that one of the employees is injured, or maybe not physically injured, but one of the employees has an emotional response to this. It's very traumatic for them, and they're just having a hard time dealing with it. Well, hopefully this is going to help them somewhat process that. Now, one of the other things you want to make sure that your organization does, and one of the things you want to make sure your organization has, is a policy and procedure in place for providing resources and support for your employees in the event that something happens that causes them some, trauma of some sort. Obviously, you got the physical and the medical and healthcare side if there's a medical trauma, but there might be some emotional trauma there. So this event is not going to fix that. Post-incident reviews are not meant to take care of that. But you should have some type of a critical incident stress process where you have a team or you have some contracted resources from the outside, people that you bring in to assist with that, whether that be through the the employee assistance program, commonly called EAP, or things of that nature where people can go to get resources and help. So this process isn't going to provide that for them, but you want to make sure that those resources are available to them if needed. Okay, so that the negative outcomes could be for the employee on that. Other negative outcomes could be if a resident gets injured or somebody gets hurt there, what's the adverse, stuff from that? What kind of implications could you have there? Could there be family members who are saying, boy, I'm not sure that I want to have my family member there if this stuff's going on. So you want to be able to deal with it on every side of the event, from the employees to the residents in the whole 9 yards, so that you can minimize the incidents and thereby minimize adverse negative outcomes. And then, of course, minimizing injuries and work comp claims. Again, we want to try to minimize those, which provides for a more efficient, effective, and profitable business for you guys. And obviously, the insurance company, we want to minimize those losses as well. Now, if we look at, why we do the post-incident reviews, from an insurance perspective, we look at it and say, okay, what kind of incidents are happening and what is it costing? How many of these things go on and what's the cost for them? So at West Bend Mutual Insurance, between 2017 and about mid-year of 2021, had a total of 3,626 claims related to combative incidents. Okay, so the frequency on this, as you can see, is somewhere in that 800 incidents per year, probably a little higher than that, actually. 2020 shows a little bit. It's kind of interesting how the incidents were lower in 2020 as far as the frequency, but on the next page, you'll notice that the severity or the claims on that year were significantly higher. So I don't know if there's a correlation between this and COVID or anything that has to do with COVID. I don't know. It's just something that I noticed when we were putting together the data on this. But between 2017 and mid-year of 2021, when we pulled this data, you can see that we had 3,626 incidents with a total incurred loss of $8,749,047. And that's for West Bend Mutual Insurance and Argent. That's for our work comp claims over that time period. Now, if you take that and extrapolate that out over the state, over the nation, and all other companies, you can see that is a very, very large dollar amount and frequency there, and something that we clearly want to try to minimize and mitigate. So that's one of the reasons that we're looking at this and trying to put this program together to see if we can somehow address this issue and help to minimize it. So now the form that we have that we put together, this is the sample form. We are still perfecting this and getting things all approved and everything to be released and be available for you folks. And once we do have this out there, we will then have this available for you to take, and you can make changes to it based on your organization and things of that nature. But the LC 2700 adverse behavior is the form. So if you are interested in that and you contact your loss control representative and say, we're interested in this, they should be able to find the form for you. But if you want to jot it down just in case, you can ask them for LC 2700 and they will be able to provide that for you once we have it fully approved for release. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're just going to take a look at this scenario again. We're going to say, okay, we have this scenario, and then we're going to look at what we just discussed and see how those things coordinate, okay? So I'm going to read it one more time. You have Julie. She works in a group home serving developmentally delayed adults. Lunch is delayed today as Julie's having difficulty with the stove. Julie had the same issues last week. However, she forgot to report it to maintenance. As the clients are sitting at the kitchen table, Julie starts to notice them growing restless as they're getting hungry for lunch. Julie tries to reassure them that lunch is almost ready. Julie notices two of the clients standing up and yelling at each other. One client accidentally knocked a stack of plates off the table and onto the floor. The arguing, the commotion of the plates hitting the floor, and the fact that the clients were growing agitated as they waited for lunch was creating a highly stressful environment. Julie approached the individuals that were arguing and tried to calm them down, when one of them acted out and struck Julie. Additional staff members in the area, hearing the commotion, came into the dining hall to assist. Eventually, everyone calmed down and they were able to serve lunch. Julie was not seriously injured, however, she was very shaken up and traumatized by the incident. So if we look at that and think, based on everything we discussed today, how would we do a post-incident review on this? So if we look at the form, one of the first things in the form it's going to do is it's going to ask us what happened. Okay, who was involved? So in this scenario, we sit and look and say, all right, who was all involved here? Well, obviously Julie, right? She was involved. We have two of the residents that were arguing and had a little argument there, and then Julie tried to become involved to calm them down, and at one point one of them struck Julie. And then we have other staff members that came in hearing all the commotion. They came in to try to help take care of things and get things settled down. So who was all involved? Julie. Now obviously the clients and residents, they are not part of the post-incident review, right? We don't bring them in. They're not part of it. Staff members only. So you want to bring the staff members in, Julie and any other staff members that were witnesses, anybody that heard or saw something, they would be part of this. Also, the supervisor, whoever supervisor manager that was on duty at that time, they would be there, okay? Then what behaviors were exhibited? So that's the thing too. We're going to look at and say what behaviors were exhibited. Well, first of all, people were hungry. They started getting agitated. Maybe there was something else that isn't in this scenario that took place between the two individuals that caused them to become confrontational with each other. We don't know what that is right now. Maybe there was some discussions with them or somebody overheard something. Who knows? But you'll want to, share that. And then the other thing is on the behaviors. If we start looking at this and say they were waiting for lunch and Julie didn't have lunch ready, and they normally eat lunch at this exact same time pretty much every day. So I'm going to jump down to the bottom one here quick where it says, was the care plan followed? Well, we don't know these individuals, what their medical needs are, but if we have somebody who is diabetic or somebody who has a strict diet, somebody who has to take medication with food, somebody who has a care plan that requires them to eat very consistently and on time every single day, that delayed lunch could have some impact on that. Maybe it's something to do with their medication or their medical status or something like that that causes them to get agitated or something like that. So then we say, where did the incident happen? In the dining facility, right? So we're going to put that in there. And then when did the incident occur? Lunchtime or specific clock time you can put there. But then it was the care plan followed. So we're going to look at that now. The care plan in this situation would probably only come into play if there was something to do with the dietary needs or something of an individual that were, somehow adversely impacted by them not having lunch ready at a certain time. But the care plan could be a million things when you talk about patient transfers, a gait belt or a sit to stand or a full body lift. And, the care plan specifically says how this is going to take place. Well, if it isn't followed, that could have some impact on this and could cause an adverse behavior event. So that's why you want to look at this. Okay, then it says, why did it happen? Okay, include details about what triggers or other factors may have contributed to the incident. So hopefully you guys have all thought about this, and when you're reading it, you're thinking to yourself, why didn't Julie say something to the maintenance when that stove didn't work last week? Well, we can't go back and point fingers and judge anything else. Maybe Julie was just so busy at that time trying to get lunch out and she was rushed and it wasn't working and she was doing this and that and she just forgot about it. So in the post-incident review, we're not going to, place blame on Julie. We're not going to call her out. But one of the things we need to do is figure out a process that we can put in place to make sure that when incidents happen with failed equipment or something like that, that there's a process for Julie to make sure that that gets reported to the maintenance department, to make sure that it gets reported so it can be looked at and repaired and things of that nature. Because if that doesn't get taken care of, now we fast forward a week later and hear that stove isn't working, and now we have an incident because that stove didn't work and wasn't able to get lunch out on time. So what other triggers? Again, maybe there was some discussion between two of the residents that was taking place, and that discussion is something that wasn't shared in this scenario. But, some other staff members or somebody heard it or somebody's aware of something that happened. So we want to look at that. There's just a million things that could be triggers, right? And that's what we want to look for is, what are those triggers? What can we do to identify them? What can we do to minimize those triggers from creating or exacerbating an incident like this? Right, what could be done to potentially reduce the probability of it happening again? Well, that's kind of the whole post-incident review process intent here, is to say, what can we do to minimize the potential, right? So is the current care plan appropriate? Again, depending on the incident, whether or not the care plan is even relevant for the incident, we'd have to look at based on the situation. But one thing we need to do is check and make sure that, is it right? If not, do we need to make adjustments to it? Do we need to make some changes? That's all stuff we need to take a look at when we're discussing the care plan. And then any additional training, okay? So if we're going to make changes, it's not just for the care plan, but training to relate to the care plan. Are they using the proper equipment? Are they properly trained on the equipment? The specific equipment that you have at your facility that they utilize for your residents, are your staff trained on that equipment? They know exactly how to use it, the proper way to use it, and everything else. Because if not, if there's somebody that came from a different facility over to yours, or maybe a temporary employee or an agency employee, are they using the exact same make and model as they did at their other facility? Or do they just think they know how to use it, and that could cause some problems, could cause pain or injury or something to the resident, which would then potentially cause them to act out? So want to make sure that that is all, something that we look at. And then do we need to add training, either initially onboard training or continual training as we go down the road? So once we determine what information we gathered and what our thought process is as far as any changing in policies or procedures or any care plan changes or anything like that, then who do we need to share that with? Who gets this information? Okay, well, obviously management is going to get the information, and what level of management is going to be determined by your individual organization, what your policies are there, and who needs to be involved in that as a decision maker. Safety committee, if you have a safety committee in your organization and they are ones who review incidents or talk about ways to mitigate safety exposures and things of that nature, then they may get this information as well. Depending on the incident and the level of the incident and those involved and potential privacy issues, all of that stuff will have to be taken into consideration when you determine how much information is shared with safety committee individuals. The care team. So you have the care team that is creating that, the care plan, whether it's rehab or who it is, physicians, nurses, whoever, they have to be made aware of this, because maybe some of the triggers are things that relate to equipment or things that are done as part of their care. And that's something that they need to know. They need to adjust the care plan or something of that nature. And then obviously staff members, anyone who's going to have, involvement or direct contact with that resident or anything else needs to know what's going on. Okay. Are there certain triggers that cause Mr. Jones to act out? Are there certain triggers that cause this situation to occur? Or is this something that isn't necessarily directed at a specific resident, but a policy thing that we have in place that we changed, or a procedural thing that we changed, or an SOG guideline that we changed. Any of that stuff that happens, that needs to be shared and brought down to the lowest level so every single person on the staff understands it, is aware of it, is trained on it, educated on it, so that when these things happen again, they're ready to deal with the situation and understand where we're at. So then follow-up. We want to follow up to make sure that the corrective actions are in place and that they're effective. Okay, so we need to assign somebody. We need to have somebody who is responsible for that. Now, that's totally up to you as an organization to determine who that is. The suggestion would be that that be somebody that has some administrative or supervisory level, that they are someone who can, be held accountable to make sure that they follow up, to make sure things are done. If it's something as far as a policy change, who's going to be writing the new policy, who's going to approve the new policy, and then how is that policy going to be shared with all the staff to make sure that it is communicated properly out there. Okay, and then when is this going to be conducted? You have to set some type of timeline. Set a timeline that says within the next 48 hours we're going to do this because it's pretty critical, or within the next week or 30 days or whatever. So have a timeline out there so that whoever is responsible knows that they need to have this done by this time and report back, okay? And so then the last one, again, report back to provide follow-up, okay? And that reporting back and follow-up should be provided to as many people as possible and based on their need to know and the importance of that. So staff members that are going to be, following policy changes, every staff member needs to know that. If it's only a change that really affects or impacts that care team that's doing the care plan and their care plan is going to go out, you still want to share the communication out with the people who are following the care plan, but you want to make sure that, communication is everywhere, right? It's the key, communication. So today what we did is we covered the post-incident review and we covered the 5 W's, what, why, when, where, and who. Now, these are all things that we want to look at when we put together a post-incident review process to make sure that it's, properly in place, that we do it in the most productive and comfortable fashion we can. We don't want anyone to be uncomfortable. We want them to be educated ahead of time. We want them to be informed. So when we do these things, they understand the purpose of them. And then how do we conduct a successful post-incident review? We covered that as well. And then the desired outcomes and the sample form that we shared. Now, this video will be available for you once we have the approval to release the sample form. Once we get it out there, you can certainly have that access to that form. We would ask you that you then contact your local West Bend Mutual Insurance representative, whether it be from West Bend Mutual Insurance, Argent, or whoever your representative is. Please give them a call. If you have any questions on who that would be, just call West Bend's home office and they will direct you to that. So I thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope this was beneficial and educational for you. If there's anything else that we at West Bend Mutual Insurance or Argent can do to assist you, please reach out to us at any time. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.